In the summer of 2022, Manchester City would sign Leeds United star Calvin Phillips for £41 million, whilst also losing club captain Fernandinho on a free due to his contract expiring and him not signing a new deal. But they would also sell youth prospect Romeo Lavia for £10 million to Southampton. And I'm going to be telling you today why I believe this to be Pep Guardiola's biggest mistake at Manchester City. And some of you might be like, Nathan, whoa, stop. Selling Cole Palmer was Pep's biggest mistake while managing City, because look at the numbers that he did last season and look how well he performed for Chelsea. And yes, I do agree, Palmer was exceptional for Chelsea last season and it was definitely a very good signing for them. But the impact that Palmer would have had in this City team and in City last season would not have been as big as the one that Lavia would have had if he was still at the club, and means we wouldn't have had to spend as much money on Calvin Phillips with his career ending up how it has. But before I get into why I think this is Pep Guardiola's biggest mistake at City, please do not forget to like the video if you enjoyed and comment down below what you think Pep's biggest mistake while managing Manchester City has been. And also, please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Your support is very much appreciated, and especially if you watch multiple of my videos. It does tell me that a lot of my viewers aren't subscribed, so if you've watched a few of my videos now and you're enjoying them, please do subscribe. It really does help me out. And also, if this is the first video one you're watching, please do check out some of the rest of the videos on the channel by clicking the channel button down below, or just by going to watch my most recent video, which is about England's most successful loser, the story of Gareth Southgate. But with all that being said, let's get into why I think selling Lavia and signing Calvin Phillips was Pep Guardiola's biggest mistake as Manchester City manager. Calvin Phillips would make 12 Premier League appearances for the treble winners in the 22-23 season, and he would only play a total of 291 minutes, and that is basically the equivalent of just 3 matches. It is literally just over 3 matches worth of football, which is really pathetic if you actually think about so 12 games and he played a total of 3 games worth of football. That's appalling. His availability was poor. He got injured, never really recovered from that injury, struggled to stay fit throughout the season, and never made a lasting impact on the squad. And when he did play, he just didn't look great. The game that will always stick in my mind was when I went to go watch the Carabao Cup game against Southampton, funnily enough, at St Mary's, where we lost 2-0, and I had to watch him get dominated by Lavia the whole game. Lavia was really showing him who was boss and really proving Pep to have made the wrong decision, because he looked a level above Phillips and it was an appalling performance from him, so much so that he had to be subbed off for Rodri to try salvage something from the game. Obviously we didn't. We lost 2-0, we got knocked out of the cup, and it stopped us winning the quadruple. Was quite sad, I know. But when you compare that to Lavia, who was only 19 at the time, who would make 29 appearances in the league, and he would play a total of 2,231 minutes, which is approximately 24 matches worth of football. And he would also go on to be the standout player in a fairly poor Saints side that obviously, they did finish rock bottom in the league, which, obviously is a failure within itself. But at 19 years of age, he was the shining light in that team. He was the one person that people looked at when they watched Southampton games, like, whoa, they actually do have a star on their hands here. And, maybe if he was in a better squad, maybe if there were some better players around him, some players with a bit more fight, hunger, maybe if the squad was managed a bit better, they could have probably survived due to, his brilliance factored on with a few other factors. But you look at this 19-year-old that we sold, going on to be a standout player in a team that really wasn't great. You don't really expect that when you send out a player on loan to a lesser team, like when Billy Gilmore went out to Norwich, or when Conor Gallagher went to West Brom for Chelsea. They didn't look great because they struggled to make an impact, because obviously they're young, they're inexperienced, they're trying to get to grips with senior men's football, and they're playing in a team that doesn't get much of the possession, doesn't get much of the ball, and doesn't have many things go their way. So they usually tend to look quite average or quite poor, because they don't have chance to develop their skills in an environment that favours them. But Lavia was different. He looked good and he thrived. It seemed to thrive in a team that wasn't too great, a team that didn't have much of the ball, and that probably is because of his role of winning the ball back, kind of dictating the play and things like that, being a bit of a powerhouse. Like, that probably does factor into it of why he looked so good. But you know, he didn't look out of place in the Premier League, and I think that is definitely the biggest compliment you could have given him at that age, was he did not look out of place in the Premier League, and that is why he was quickly snapped up by Chelsea upon the Saints' relegation at the end of the season. But when you compare that to Phillips, who, yes, I know Phillips played Premier League football beforehand, but he would come into a team where they had a lot of the ball. You'll come into a team that gets a lot more of the ball than the team you previously played for in Leeds, right? You'll come into a team that get a lot more of the ball. Your job as a holding midfielder isn't really as hard as it probably was at Leeds, right? You don't really have much to do. But he just looked out of place. He looked like well off the pace. His first touch was always poor. That's the one thing I remember from watching Phillips, is he would always lose the ball on his second touch. He always looked scared to get stuck in, and yes, you know, he would sometimes show his exceptional passing range on occasion, because he is an excellent passer, Calvin Phillips. He's one of the best passers I've seen in the Premier League of recent years. That isn't one of the top tier elite players. He's one of the best passers I've seen, but that, like, he didn't show that enough, because he was just losing the ball for heavy touches. He was playing nervous. He didn't feel like he fit into the playing for the Premier League champions, playing for future treble winners. He didn't look like he fit in, and you could see the nerves when he played, and that is why, even when he was fit, even when we probably could have rested Rodri for him, he didn't get into the team, because he just didn't look like he was up to scratch, up to playing at that level. And that obviously brings us into last season, where obviously, unfortunately, Lavia didn't really play any minutes because of due to injury. Kind of the same thing that happened to Phillips in the season before. And some of you might be like, exactly, Nathan. Like, look, Lavia has now missed a huge chunk of football due to injury, same as Phillips did last season. It's, you know, how is it that big of a mistake? But I honestly feel like Lavia's injury problems was due to Chelsea's poor medical team. Obviously, Chelsea have a poor medical team as of recent. A lot of their players struggle to stay fit. Reece James, Wesley Fofana, Lavia, even to add in there, Ben Chilwell. All these players struggle to stay fit, and they always have fitness injuries. And I think that is because they're being mismanaged by their medical team. Obviously, I might be wrong. I'm not a physiotherapist. I don't know the ins and outs of all of this, but that's just from an outsider's perspective, right? Someone that might be a bit more versed in the topic could let me know down in the comments whether Chelsea do have a good medical team, and I'm just chatting nonsense. But, you know, from it, this seems that Chelsea have a poor medical team, and I think that his fitness has definitely been mismanaged at the club. And if he was still at City, or even still at Southampton in the Championship, he would have definitely played a lot more minutes than he did this season. But then you look at Phillips. This was meant to be his breakout season at City. Second season under Pep, that is when players really do come alive. You look at Grealish, you even look at Rodri. Like, you know, they might not have been great in their first season, but their second season under Pep is where they really kick on. But that wasn't the case. That was not the case at all. He barely played, got injured again, struggled to stay fit. Pep Guardiola would even say that he came back from either injury or pre-season overweight, and he wasn't happy with his weight. Something that, you know, Pep has said about players like Aguero before in the past, because he's quite strict on player fitness. And it was clear that there was a disconnect between Pep and Phillips, and Phillips was definitely very disinterested in his City career, which would lead him to go out on loan in January to West Ham, in which he would say that, you know, he wasn't happy with the way Pep spoke about him, about, you know, him needing to lose weight and stuff, and he wasn't happy about that. He came out and kind of spoke badly on Pep. You could say that's fairly so. Maybe what Pep said was out of line, but anyway, I digress. You get to his West Ham career, and it was actually nothing short of appalling. It was nothing short of appalling. He was terrible. He was probably the worst player on the pitch every time he played. Like, hands down, he was terrible. And, you know, I wanted him to succeed at West Ham. Mostly because I wanted them to sign him and we could get him off the books. But I wanted him to succeed. You know, I didn't want him to do poorly. I didn't want him to fail. But watching him play for West Ham showed that it wasn't just a City issue. It wasn't just the fact that he couldn't deal with the high standards and the nerves of playing at the top level. Like, at the top level, right? he just lost it. Like, he just lost his ability, lost all of his confidence, and he couldn't even do it at a lesser level when moving back down to a club that wasn't competing at the standards that City were. Obviously, no offence to West Ham, but they're not challenging for the title in the Champions League year in, year out. So you look at that, you look at the way he spoke about the club and the manager, the performances he had at the club, the performance he had then away from the club, and you know, that little falling out, the little spat he had with West Ham fans when they were giving him a bit of stick after one of his poor performances. And I just think I don't think there's a way back for Phillips. The same way I don't think there's a way back from Chancellor. Chancellor and Phillips, I don't see a possible way where there is a way back for those two at City. So we're now at a point where, once again, we're in the market for a backup six. Because Kovacic, as much as people want to say he can play there, he can't play there. He's way too rash and reckless to play there, right? So we're once again in the market for a backup six, right? Because again, Rodri's legs are about to evaporate, like I said in my video about him a few weeks ago, right? Rodri is even said himself that the level of football he's playing is unsustainable and he does need a rest, right? Which puts pressure on the club to go find a backup six. Who was that perfect person? Someone we had at the club before Phillips. He was there. He was there. And I honestly believe, even at that time, he could have been, you know, just slowly introduced up into the squad, play a few cup games. You know, Rodri still play as much football as he did in the 22-23 season, but he's got an understudy there. He's got someone to learn from him. Not a player that we brought in that is the exact same age as Rodri. So, like, mathematically speaking, they would probably fizzle out their careers at the same time, and then you'd need to replace both of them. You have an understudy in this, at the time, 19-year-old kid getting ready to learn from a manager that's played that position and one of the best players that plays that position in the current day, being Rodri, right? But instead we opted for the Calvin Phillips approach. And I honestly think this season, if he can come back fit this season, Lavia will show everybody why that is the biggest mistake that Pep made, letting him go from the club and signing Calvin Phillips. And again, like I said, even bigger than letting Palmer go, because yes, we let Palmer go, he scores all his goals, spearheads Chelsea's return to European football, right? We still win the league. We've got Foden putting up decent goal scoring numbers. We had Doku that had a decent season, right? You had even Oscar Bob that was able to look good when he came on, right? Cole Palmer's not playing Foden, not getting in the squad over Foden. Cole Palmer's not getting in the squad over Grealish. He would be getting those Oscar Bob minutes. He then wouldn't score that many goals and really have the chance to become the main man that he has at Chelsea. So leaving City was probably the best for his development. It was good for City's net spend because we got a hefty chunk of money for an academy graduate, and it was probably the best for Oscar Bob's development as well. So there's wins all round in that situation because he's not exactly missed because we've got players that can fit in that position. But like I've said with Lavia, one of the best up and coming midfielders that I saw in the Premier League, at the time anyway, when I was looking at the stats in Premier League 2 under 21s football, I was excited to see Lavia come up into the starting 11, and I thought with Fernandinho leaving he would have stepped up. But then we signed Phillips, he goes out, and he proves me right because he looked exceptional for Southampton, especially given the circumstances that him and the club were in. And yeah, I just think it's a huge miss from City, and it is one of the biggest L's we've taken in transfers as of recent. I don't really see many people talk about it. I don't really see many City fans really talk about the fact that we had the answer to this this problem that we've had for the last 2 seasons right there, and we got rid of him for a gamble on Phillips, which, you know, I still to this day don't really understand. But and that's all I really have to say on the topic. So, you know, let me know down below what you think of City selling Lavia, and if you think it was a mistake from City, or you think they should have sold him. You know, they made a little bit of money on him, and, you know, we've moved on, he's moved on, he's now not playing football because he's been injured, or if you think that he was definitely the answer to the problems, like if you agree with me and think that he is the answer to the problems that we've got. Also, let me know down below what you think's next for Calvin Phillips, where you think he'll end up, because again, like I said, I don't see any way back for him at City. I just think, it's done. His City career is done, and both him and City need to cut our losses and just go our separate ways. But again, with all that being said, like the video if you enjoyed, and please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I know I've got a nice haircut now, nice little shape up fade, but I did say if we get 1,000 subscribers, I'll shave all this, even though there's not much left actually, because it's went a little short. It's went a little bit too short for my liking. But you can get it even shorter with that being a straight 0 all round, all my hair off. If we hit 1,000 subscribers, I'll keep my word to that, and I'll stick to that. So please, do subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the rest of the videos on the channel. 2 will be suggested to you at the end of this video. Well, at the end of this sentence when I finish speaking. But again, with all that being said, I've been Nathan, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.
Shut down cases, they belly dots to the can't see faces, chasing the bad guy chase it. You don't wanna be the one like Ace and like G-Take trying to turn them out wasted. Aye, tell a bad bitch come break it, body come mad, come shake it, then get back to the basics, bro done shut down cases, they belly dots to the